hallucinating? Huh? Man, those research assholes sure fuck you up.
Okay, we are live. Okay, so no one's talking about this, but I want to just play this. This is a really fast video, but this is on C-SPAN in front of Congress. And for some reason, no one's even talking about this. Mainstream media is not covering it.
Do you believe our government has made contact with intelligent extraterrestrials?
Something I can't discuss in public setting.
Okay, I can't ask when you think this occurred. If you believe we have crashed craft, stated earlier, do we have the bodies of the pilots who piloted this craft?
As I've stated publicly already in my News Nation interview, biologics came with some of these recoveries. Yeah.
Were they, I guess, human or non-human biologics?
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still on the program.
And was this documentary evidence, this video, photos, eyewitness? Like, how would that be determined?
The specific documentation I would have to talk to you in a skiff about.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NB.
So what do you?
I think they just admitted that they just admitted they found like ET.
Absolutely. So what do you think that means? No one's talking. They did this in front of Congress, so it's out there. We all watched it live on our podcast thing. Now here's the Malaysian thing. This is a little longer, but I'm going to play it. Okay.
Okay.
It's going to take me a second here. I'm not super.
Quickly they leaked this from this source, protected. So this person has other videos. Their other sources don't say protected on them. It probably took them weeks to be convinced that what they were even looking at is real, because they didn't have a basis in 2014.
But we still don't know whose footage this is.
So we know it's the government's for sure. We've identified the spy satellite that was in the right location as the USA 229 at the exact right time, which has a sister satellite next to it that could take this.
Which, by the way, the links to these are in the description below. If anybody watching wants to see the whole video, it's pretty worthy. It's shout out to Rex Bear from Leak Project. Amazing channel.
Side by side that we see here, because this is actually two different angles aiming down. This isn't a duplicated video left and right here. And we've proven that as well. So potentially the leaker knew, also because these coordinates on the bottom left indicate the Nicobar Islands. They knew that they were delivering absolute proof to us, but that they probably didn't realize the media wouldn't pick up on it and potentially might be controlled, or that we just would not have the collective conscience to realize this video is real. When people first looked at it, they thought they were looking up in this video. They didn't even realize we were looking down from outer space. The background here is 6 frames per second. That's why you see this stutter effect. So this is really just images that are being overlaid on top of each other to create a video, which is what video is. This mouse you see coming in the screen here, this mouse is at 24 frames per second. Debunkers actually proved the videos to be real for us. They thought that this would somehow indicate the videos are fake, but this means it's actually a Citrix session that the person logged into the real spy satellite database. And then what we're seeing here is a very cropped version of a very wide field of view. These satellites, if you look at the SBIRS videos, they are scanning the Earth all the time to create essentially what is like a Google Earth video playback. And that's what we're seeing right here. So when we knew that this was a Citrix session logged in, this automatically debunks or rebunks any prosaic debunk attempts where people try to say something doesn't look right, because we've already just proven the authenticity of these videos. The leaker didn't just probably only wanted to leak this video. Weeks later, they end up leaking the second video. So we can see this smoke trail coming clearly from the back of the plane. These are cumulus clouds that we're seeing here. These cumulus clouds only form at low altitudes. These are not contrails conclusively. So this is smoke coming from the back of the plane, consistent with the lithium-ion battery fire scenario that we have indicated. There's a witness somewhere nearby here who had seen this plane just minutes before, glowing orange, consistent with the bromine from the halon gas permeating throughout the plane. She also saw a very dark smoke coming from the back of the plane. she also saw the plane descending, which we've proven that that's what's happening here. This plane is descending and making a circle turn. It's attempting a landing. We even found an intercepted communication, only reported in Chinese news, that claims to be from MH370, saying that it was disintegrating and attempting an emergency landing. So we have 3 sources of corroboration for these videos. I would argue that we have more evidence these videos are real than any court case in human history. Now, you can see this first orb is coming in at around Mach 3
It's
speeds.
hauling.
It's moving 10 times faster than the plane. It's ignoring gravity.
Jesus, titty fucking.
Around the plane. The second orb, as you maybe missed that, I'll go show it again. This second orb is going to shoot up through the water here, across the water, and then come up through this cloud that we see down here. So you watch very closely, you can see it right there, and it shoots up through the cloud, and then it's now going around it. Now the third orb gets into place, and then they get into a locked formation, and then they switch orientations, and they start rotating around a different way. Now they're encircling the entire plane here at this point, and they're encircling in a sphere, like they're tracking it, they're measuring it, or something like that. And then they change orientations to be vertically aligned. And you'll see that happen once it gets to this cloud right here. So they encircle it, they're following the center of mass, and now they're going around it from a vertical perspective. You see that? It's like they're preparing it for what's about to happen right here, and then zap. And so what we think is happening here, yeah, we think that they're somehow able to induce some type of very energetic event, potentially through the use of superconductivity. The leaker moves the video over to the right. We can see that the smoke stops dead in its tracks right here. It doesn't continue forward, indicating this is not cloaking of any sort. It's not annihilation. This zap that we see, due to the amount of mass in this plane, the mass has to go somewhere. The mass and energy does. So if this plane was being annihilated, like a nuclear bomb going off, this would be a much, much bigger energetic event than this event we see here. The reason why we see this flash actually accurately illuminates the clouds. We think this not only proves it's nighttime, but we also think that this essentially proves that the videos are real. And that what's happening is this event is energizing the electrons around the zap. So this is very unusual. And this is why it's very hard for people to understand and believe. But this is part of the reason why I think that what we're looking at here is reverse engineered technology. Is that this plane is doomed, and this technology was deployed to save the plane that would otherwise have been destroyed if it had crashed into the water.
They literally saved those people. We were thinking they got taken out, but what if they got what if they got sick? I'm thinking of who is John Galt?
Mm-hmm.
Atlas Shrugged, right?
Yeah, and so the thing there is it doesn't make sense to destroy the plane. The plane's already doomed, right? So if you want to destroy the plane, you just let it crash at that point. And all those people are going to die, and the plane's going to crash into the Nicobar Islands there. So really the only reason to do that is to make it stop. And those, again, the lithium-ion battery fires, those things are not going to put themselves out. What if that event we see is able to put out the lithium-ion battery fire and save this plane from that perspective? To me, that's the most logical conclusion. And let's look at it from the other angle. So a few weeks later, so if we look at just real quick, we look at the information on this one. Again, regicide anon again. Published June 12th, received June 5th. This is just 3 weeks after the first video. So presumably, and this drone was cropped out of the first video. We can tell that it's pretty much just cropped out of the screen based on the fact that we can see the smoke trail right there and where it is in position. So they leaked this one because we didn't believe the first one. We had absolute proof in the first one. We could identify the satellite, what have you. This one starts to show us what the technology looks like. Normally, these electro-IR cameras are going to be black and white, but they've colorized it, which also indicates the person that leaked this was an operator, somebody who had information about how these systems work. Somebody that probably had an emotional reaction like we would have looking at it and realized nobody's going to be able to prove this without this information. So in this drone footage video here, I want you to look at the orbs themselves. We can see that they're using some sort of electromagnetic engine to create geodesics. In other words, their own gravity. And you can see that from these black trails. These trails are not coming behind the orbs. They're actually in front of the orbs. If you look very closely, you can see that. They're like running along train tracks. And they're creating their own geodesics while ignoring the force of gravity of the Earth, which is showing superconductivity properties. The person who's filming this clearly knows something's going to happen here. They're zooming in on it to get the best intelligence they can, and they zoom out right before the zap happens. They also show us this heat signature that's going on underneath the plane, which is either heat from the air conditioning being vented out. We're still digging into that. But one thing I want to point out is right before the end here, you can see these heat signatures on the orbs that is spinning as well, which we think is related to the superconductors spinning that can somehow create these geodesics.
Okay.
At the last moment, you can see them converge on the plane. If you saw that, and I think there's a slow-mo. They converge on the plane, which I think is somehow amplifying their capabilities, which then allows it to zap out, and then it's gone. Now the leaker zooms out here, show there's no plane. That's it. And this wouldn't be the leaker at this point. This would have been the live footage and what the live footage looked like and a pre-recorded. Now, again, you can see, if you look closely on some of these, you can see they zoom in on the orbs, and this is not part of the original video. This is part of, so what somebody did here on this. You can see what those orbs look like very clearly. They get accurately distorted when they go through the back of the plane as well. And you can see the trails. I think it shows another version here in a
almost
second.
Like pinwheels almost.
You can see the front of them, right? The black lines in front of them, and they're just following those lines. I also think that it's possible that these lines they're creating are changing the atmosphere to a degree where you can potentially see what we would call contrails in the sky. You can see the lines in front of them right here and where they're tracking as well on this. And I have another version that makes it even more apparent with that. And here's the super slow-mo where you can see actually it looks like gravitational lensing, where these orbs are being bent. The light from them is being bent as they approach in on the plane at the last second right here where you can see. And even at the last second, we have a version of this that we created that is decolorized. You can actually see there's like almost a cold shell around the plane in the very last moment as well, which I'll be happy to share if you want to take a look at that real quick.
Please, absolutely. This is
so let's look at the dark trails first. Let me switch over.
I mean, this is next level right here. Do you think it was a defense contractor that did it? They're like, oh, we could use them. Let's go save them.
I don't think there's another third party involved just because it adds more complexity to it. It really just seems like it's the U.S. military. But of course, the contractors would have been the ones to develop this technology. I won't name them because I don't want to be disappeared anytime soon, but you can kind of take your guesses. They're the people that everybody would have expected pretty much. This is where you can very clearly see the trails in front of them with this version, right? So if you look closely here, every time, if I pause it like here, you can see these trails are coming from the front of the orbs here, and they're following the path of these trails. This is probably my favorite version of the footage that's out there. That, again, we've created this version of it to better see this information on there. So that's really big. One of the other ones I want to show real quick is, let's see, the Passover. So let's look at this Passover detail. And are you seeing the Passover at this point? Yeah, you are. So you can see these are the satellites. This is the recursion. This is the actual trajectory. It's been independently confirmed by 2 different people that this is the real trajectory. You can see the time at the top. So now we're approaching 1840. And this is the part here where this orb, we actually think these satellites can see much wider than this, probably several thousand kilometers in radius or in diameter. And so the plane is probably somewhere right here between these islands down here. And so this is the data that's being sent out from the satellites back to the Sibir system to create that 3D stereoscopic effect from these 2 satellites orbiting next to each other. So that part's also really big. And just because some people might not certainly believe the Sibir system, I like to show the Sibir system information as well, which this is to me the smoking gun on how this works. I mean, just watch how these satellites are operating. Look at that. Look at how they're scanning the Earth. And some of these satellites are scanning from different orbits. These ones that are far away are what they call geostationary satellites. The ones that are close are going to be your millennial orbit ones, which are going to be your command satellites. And then you're going to have these low Earth orbit ones like USA 229 that are going to be scanning from a very close range as well. And so what this is doing is it's taking information and allowing them to build a full battlefield map in 3D, which is very good for targeting and battlefield awareness purposes. I never thought we would be able to know this much information about how these satellites work, but all of this is just publicly available knowledge. And once you piece it together, you're like, okay, so the government's just scanning the Earth all the time and has perfect video playback of everything that there's going on. I mean, that's probably what's really happening here. So that one's really interesting.
Yeah. Thanks for showing this, because as much as we've heard about satellites, most people have no idea how they work. So to see this, it puts it in perspective. And that,
so here's what happened with this plane too. This is Chris from the Not So Deep podcast created this animation. So this plane's taking off from Kuala Lumpur. This is where it gets to 17:20, 21 UTC, right after the pilot says, "Good night, Malaysian Airlines Flight 370." This is where our lithium-ion battery fire begins. This is where we have our first explosive event. You have Mike McKay, who sees it from an oil. Yeah, jump
quick
on
question.
it.
Sorry. Do you think that was a natural event, natural current event, or do you think that it was sabotage? The lithium.
There's still mystery here in terms of how it started. If it just naturally occurred, if there's something more going on, and it would be very difficult to figure that out exactly. But looking at these lithium-ion battery fires and how these were packaged, which we did a peek on, they don't seem very safe at all. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if this was a naturally occurring event. What happened? Yeah.
But real quick, if there's 19 people on that plane that are that important, and as you said, that shouldn't be that way, there's clearly something. And then, so for them to allow that many people on the plane and to allow lithium-ion batteries on the plane, that seems kind of weird.
Yeah, well, again, this was before we kind of knew about the situation. If you look, there was an article or a picture I put from the FAA. If you go look and Google lithium-ion batteries FAA, these incidents are happening once a week, even now, even after they've banned them from cargo bays in 2015. Before that, we didn't know very much about how dangerous these were. I mean, we did, but the public didn't really know. So in this situation at this time, they wouldn't have been fully aware of this extreme dangers. These batteries were not screened twice, and they were put together the same day they were put on the plane. So they also
Black Ops crews couldn't have came up with something like that, like, assassin crew or something.
I mean, I can't really speculate too much on that front, but again, like I said, there's a lot of mystery in terms of how this event happened here. Okay. So whatever happened here, Mike McKay sees this plane on fire from when the incident first occurs, and he did not see it crash. If you look at his actual witness statement, he just saw a fire. And at that point, this plane is going to turn around. And according to the Wired article, which actually argued that this might be a fire scenario based on the flight path here, they even argued that the first thing the pilot would do would turn off the bus so that they could identify which circuitry might be disabled from the fire, which might indicate why the plane went dark at this point. Now, this plane turns around and it goes directly to Penang Langkawi International Airport. This is the correct location that during an emergency event, the closest airport, safest airport that they could go to. Again, this is like 1:20 in the morning. By the time it gets here, it's almost 2 in the morning. Now, at the same point here, all of these people along the coast, there's like 9 different witnesses that hear a loud bang at 17:20, which is consistent with the lithium-ion battery explosion. The plane flies for about 10 minutes till it's about right here. There's fishermen aloft on the coast here, like 8 of them in a boat. They see the plane flying so low, it seemed extremely unusual, under 10,000 feet. The reason for that would be if this plane was depressurized from this explosion, you got to get enough oxygen for these people to be able to breathe. The masks are only going to last for 15 to 25 minutes of oxygen. So you have to fly under 10,000 feet in order to allow them to breathe. Now it gets to Penang, and this is where the cell phone of the co-pilot pings the station, indicating, again, some type of distress situation. People have argued that the plane can land on its belly. The thing's full of fuel and potentially on fire. So I don't think it's a very safe event for them to try to land without landing gear, or if the landing gear was damaged, which I think we have to kind of assume because they didn't try to land at this point. Because you got to get this plane on the ground as soon as possible. Now, I've had sources come to me and tell me that the plane can last while on fire, as long as it's being contained, for enough time for it to get over here where we see it in our videos. I also had confirmation that this witness over here that we're going to get to, Kate T, she sees this plane glowing orange. That's consistent with this gas permeating throughout the plane. I've also got independent confirmation that that's what would happen as well. So this plane reaches here. At this point, I'm imagining that they did communicate with the U.S. government, that they created a rendezvous point, and these communications have been classified. And I want to dig into that soon and figure out what communications we can find that were linked to this, because I have a feeling that we will be able to dig up and find some communications in addition to the distress signal that we've already uncovered. Now, the official narrative says this plane lost contact in 1822. If you go look back, even right now, at all the official reports from the next day, the real time that they say they lost contact, 1840 UTC, consistent with our satellite, consistent with the witness told me of her sighting as well. Everything lines up. We have 3 different independent corroborations of 1840 UTC. They waited weeks to release this radar data, presumably because they had to develop a cover story for what would have happened. Same with the Inmarsat pings. They waited really long to release it when there's no reason to do that. If you're an honest person, you're releasing that information the next day, making it public so that people can figure out the mystery, right? So it gets over here to this point. Our witness is on a boat. She's going to Phuket. She sees the glowing orange plane consistent with the direction of travel. They've rebuilt it based on her automatic GPS signals. to figure out the general relative direction of it, and it's circling around counterclockwise just like this. Now she goes inside the boat at the wrong moment to go put the kettle on, and presumably misses the plane disappearing and the orbs, which we can see only show up for about less than a minute. And she comes back out. There's no more plane anymore. I've talked to her personally and corroborated her story after it's already been out there on the internet for 9 years. And she tells me she comes out and all she sees is a glowing orange halo with no plane anymore. And she stares at it for a while after she comes back out. So all of this is 100% consistent with the scenario that we have been building, which is an emergency event from the fire, from lithium-ion batteries, where this plane is doomed. And the only scenario at this point is to save the plane is to deploy this technology, which either presumably puts this out or puts the plane in range of somewhere where it can safely land. So
what do we think of this?
Well, this is the first time I'm hearing of this.
Yeah.
If I were to unpack this, I know with like the 5th generation fighter jets, the new advances in radar, pilots have been saying that they've been seeing these orbs all the time, like it's a common occurrence. And the government has recently been coming out, been forthcoming with it, saying, "Hey, we see these all the time." As of the teleportation, I really can't say much on it. Would we use an experimental, confidential technology to save an airplane, or would we save that for military application? I think go ahead.
There's a guy, Walter Bosley, who's on Bernie's channel, where I'm on occasionally. He's ex-Air Force intelligence, and his father was too. His father, on his deathbed, said he's seen the bodies. He says that they are us in the future, and they're not extraterrestrial.
So you're saying the future time traveling backwards?
Yeah,
what you were implying.
Says, and he's a reputed badass. I'm gonna play Bernie's video and then go non-live, and then we can talk again. Bernie's intro video, I just love it.